My absolute honor to welcome to the podcast the first person that I've met in New Hampshire, or the first person that lives in New Hampshire to appear on the podcast. So I first met you, Jessica, in September when I just Google searched yoga studios near me as I moved to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and the studio that you worked at just happened to be, one of the studios you work at, I should say, just happened to have the cheapest membership. So that is why I walked into your yoga studio on a Monday evening. I didn't know that you were the instructor at the time. I just walked in and really liked your class. I love your vibe. I love the way that you approach the class from both a mental and physical standpoint. So I love yoga. I've been practicing for probably since I was 15 years old. I love the physical, the spiritual. I so go with my life all the time that I really relish the time that I get to spend in your classes on Mondays, because it's time to just slow down and be grateful and be present and get in touch with your body and the people around you. And so I'm really excited for this conversation because you are someone who I don't know that well, but I have a tremendous amount of respect for based on the short amount of time that we have spent together in the studio. So it is an honor to welcome Jessica Lescrinier to the podcast. Welcome, Jessica. How are you?
Thank you. What an introduction. I'm doing very well. That was so many kind words, so thank you.
Of course. Well, you are just coming off of, I think, like your 9th yoga gig that you have. So you're a school teacher by day and a yoga teacher by night. You work at all sorts of different studios in Portsmouth or in the Portsmouth area. You just started goat yoga this past weekend and you do paddleboarding yoga in the summer. It's like, that is crazy. I need to know more about this goat yoga experience because it is something that I've always wanted to do. I actually tried to do goat yoga a couple of years ago. In Hartford, Connecticut. I thought it was free. I saw a flyer and then I showed up and they're like, yeah, it's $50. I was like, all right, I don't know if I want to play with goats that badly, but how was it?
Well, so goat yoga it's a very experiential practice. So that is not necessarily for hardcore yogis, but instead for people who want a taste of yoga with a really pressure-free environment. It can be really intimidating to walk into a yoga studio knowing nothing. I remember when I first moved to Portsmouth close to 6 years ago, I first walked into the studio that you met me at, Branches, formerly Yoga Smith, because it was the least expensive yoga studio in the city. It's like, I can't afford any of this. And I remember being horrified because I didn't understand the words in Sanskrit. I didn't feel comfortable moving in this room full of people who are super experienced. And the whole experience, although fun, just was very intimidating. Goat yoga is the opposite. Our disclaimer is that you shouldn't bring clothes that you like, a mat that you like, or really anything that you don't mind getting dirty, because you are getting chewed on, you are getting jumped on. So we have just a little bit of yoga with a lot of silliness and fun, and goats screaming, I guess is the best way to put it.
That's amazing. For the New Hampshire listeners of this podcast, Legacy Lane Farm, is that it on
Yes.
Sundays? Amazing. All right. So paddleboard yoga, that I've seen people doing paddleboard yoga before, and just that sounds very difficult. It looks very difficult. Is it as difficult as it appears to be?
Yes. But again, as more of an experiential type of practice, people will come to Sivasana. That is the company I work for. That's run right by Goat Island, right before you get into Newcastle. With paddleboard yoga, you're anchored in. So we have a couple of anchor lines. So you're not just free floating in the ocean. We are in the estuaries right off of the Piscataqua River. So you don't need to worry about the current. You don't need to worry about too many waves, if anything, little baby ones from boats. And what we do is we build you up to more challenging postures. So we'll start very slow and gradually build our way up. The great part about paddleboard yoga is that there's not a very scary fall. We're in about 10, 15 feet of water. You not only have an inflatable waist, I'm using the word for it. You have a life jacket essentially that will inflate if you fall off, but also
Nice.
your paddleboard is a flotation device.
Yeah.
So you're all safe there. We're all certified up the wazoo to take care of you out there. And you are privy to the most beautiful sunsets you will see on the Seacoast, in my humble opinion.
I have not been here yet for the summer, so I'm very much looking forward to seeing said sunsets. How did you first get into yoga? You started about a decade ago. How did you first get into it?
All right, so it's quite the interesting journey. When I was in college, I couldn't figure out what my problem was. And with that, I mean, everyone was having fun around me. Everyone was connecting around me. I was doing some of that, but I felt like something was missing. I went to the doctor. I said, I just feel off. He said, you're depressed. I said, I don't think I'm depressed. I don't feel depressed. I just feel uncomfortable. But with the insistence that I was depressed, put me on antidepressants. I go back to school and I'm not liking how I'm feeling. So in a desperate attempt at control, or as my therapist tells me, that is how I fell into my really challenging relationship with food and exercise. And I developed a really intense eating disorder, something that had been underlying my entire life, but came to a head when I was the one in control of my life and just me. So I was diagnosed with anorexia nervosa, and that is just the restriction of food. With that, I found, well, I can't control how uncomfortable I feel, but I can control how much food I put into my body and how much I exercise, which was a lot. I end up shedding about 30 pounds in about 2 months, and I'm thinking that I'm crushing it until I realize I don't have any energy. I can't focus. I can't think straight. I can't sleep well. And I fall back into that original place of discomfort that I started in. And I like to share with people who have had a similar experience that I was positive that once I hit a certain number, I was going to be happy. And I kept waiting and waiting, and I'd weigh myself like crazy. And I was like, once I get right here to this number, then I'm going to be happy. And I made it. And I weighed myself. And I've never been more disappointed in my life when the fireworks didn't go off. There I was, skinniest I'd ever been. That's all I ever thought I wanted. And I felt nothing. And it was then that I realized that I needed to start making some changes. So I talked to my doctor. I got off the antidepressants. I was like, these weren't working for me. Exercising this way isn't working for me. Eating like this isn't working for me. And I found yoga. Just simple college rec center yoga classes. And in this class, I found that I wanted to have the strength to do more. I wanted to have the strength to get through an entire class without taking child's pose, because it felt so good when I was moving, but I didn't have the energy. So thus begins my relationship with yoga and food. I was eating, not for me yet, but I was eating for yoga, because I knew that when I was doing yoga, my brain was quiet. I was so focused on not falling over and doing the postures correctly and following along with the class that I couldn't think about all the other things that were bothering me. This turned into a more concentrated practice. This turned into a move to Portsmouth, where I membership at Yoga Smith, now Branches Yoga. And form a really, really, really consistent yoga practice. So I share a lot on social media about my journey with food, with struggling with an eating disorder, because I find that eating disorders aren't conveyed or depicted in social media, in the media, as anything other than people who look like they are on the verge of death. I never got there. So often I didn't want to talk about it because it felt dismissed. I didn't look like skin and bones, so it wasn't a scary enough thing. But it's a struggle. When you struggle with an eating disorder, you struggle with control. When you go to a yoga class, you are not in control anymore. You surrender yourself to listening to the cues of your instructor. You surrender yourself to listening to your body and what he or she is willing to do in that moment. And through that, I found, if this can make me feel worthy and feel whole and feel safe in my body, I want to be able to offer that to others as well. And with that, I enrolled in yoga teacher training in 2018.
Thank you for sharing all of that. That is an awesome story, a story that I'm sure a lot of people can relate to, but might not be so open about. So thank you for your honesty and vulnerability there. I mean, so many things out of that I want to ask you. I first just want to ask, why did you feel whatever your number was that you thought would make you happy? What put that number in your mind? Why did you feel that was the path to happiness? After all, it is just a number.
That's a great question. I think that growing up, especially growing up as, a millennial, our media depicted beauty as being very, 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 very thin. It was never very, very strong. It was never love your body, this very new, amazing movement that exists now. It was look this way. And I didn't. I wanted to, but I didn't. And it felt like if I could control that piece of myself, if I could control this specific number, this arbitrary number that I had made up in my mind as the worthy number, then everyone, but really just me, would see my worth. And that was the day that I stepped on the scale and felt no change, that I realized I had been doing everything wrong.
What was your relationship with food exactly? Take us inside kind of what it's like to have an eating disorder. Would it be, you would eat a lot of food when people weren't watching, or you would just starve yourself completely, or you would just, you nixed all your favorite foods and said, I'm just going to eat only vegetables, or what did it look like?
Well, particularly in a college setting where there's a dining hall, it resulted in massive anxiety because there are so many options.
Yeah.
Which means that even though I want to eat very little, if I eat nothing, it's too obvious. Because I didn't want to draw attention to that. That didn't feel right to me. So how can I fill my plate without dealing with the guilt of being wasteful, without drawing too much attention that I'm not eating anything at all, and while also not having an internal meltdown while looking at all the food and deciding that I couldn't have it. So for me, and it's different for each individual person, for me, it looked like a relationship with a calorie counting app.
Yep.
And I had decided that, as long as I ate between 600 and 800 calories a day, and then I burned them all off, I would be in good shape.
Wow.
And then I was shocked that I was so tired without any energy in my body.
Did anyone ever talk to you? Did any of your friends or whoever was in your life at that time ever say, "Hey, Jessica, you need to eat more," or "Jessica, you're too skinny," or anything like that?
No, quite the opposite. This is the hard part about struggling with an eating disorder. And it's something that, I don't wish to speak for others, but almost every woman I've ever known has struggled at one point in her life. When you go down this road and you start to lose the weight, everyone will tell you how great you look. And that's the problem. So this validation, even if you had a second thought, like, I really don't feel good, I don't know if this is healthy. It's much like smoking, right? You get addicted to the act. You get addicted to the validation. And even though you know smoking's bad for you, you know it. There's not a person on this planet that's like, I am immune to the dangers of smoking. You know that you're literally killing your body, but you become so addicted to the rush of losing an eighth of a pound, or someone telling you, oh my gosh, you look amazing, that you just commit more and more and more.
Wow. You said that, you were talking to a therapist at that time. Was it hard for you to make that decision? Because I know, especially, therapy and talking about mental health is much more openly accepted and embraced in this current moment, but really only within probably the last 2-3 years. You were in college a decade ago. So what was it like for you to make that decision then?
Well, if I were to give advice to anyone thinking about therapy, it would be shop around. Finding a good therapist is like dating. You need to find someone that's going to fit who you are and how you think and how you react to things. So when I was in college, I hit an all-time low weight. I was in a mindset, I think I was 19 years old, where it occurred to me, like, I'm really going to hurt myself. In terms of the way that I'm treating my body, like this isn't going a good way. So I sat my parents down. I said, I think I need to go see a therapist. And I laid it out, and we're like, all right, cool. So they took me to someone who's specifically a therapist for people who struggle with eating disorders, body dysmorphic disorder, and the like. And I had the worst experience of my life. The therapist asked me to tell her with a piece of string how big I thought I was. And then we were going to use another piece of string and actually measure me to see how big I actually was. And that's how she was going to determine whether or not I struggled with this body image problem.
Wow.
And I said, I know my measurements. I know every measurement on my body. And she said, we're just going to do it anyway. Lo and behold, they are within inches, the same circle. And I'm trying to explain to her, this isn't how this works for me. She interrupts me, takes a phone call mid-session. I'm so sorry. Comes back to me, and I was like, I'm not doing this. My 19-year-old self was like, I'm too good for this. I don't need help. This is what I get when I ask for help. Like, I'm good on my own. And it wasn't until I was, gosh, not even that long ago, 26, 27 years old, that I found, or even considered finding, a new therapist who I actually can gel with. And it feels more like having a casual conversation where someone is very blunt and upfront with me, rather than someone telling me how my brain works and disagreeing with me. That makes sense.
So you're in a much better place in your life now in every aspect, but you still are in therapy.
Oh yeah.
Now, so I feel like that is becoming more common for people who they just want to have someone to talk to. It's not necessarily, oh, I'm dealing with this specific issue that I need to go see a therapist for. It's just like, I like going to this person who will not judge me, who I can just talk to, get things off my chest, and that's totally okay. Is that what it's like for you?
Well, yes and no. I see it more as doing the work to unlearn toxic or unhealthy patterns from my past. So my goal is always to continue to learn, continue to grow as a human being. But I also hold a belief that it's not your friends or your families or your partners' obligation or responsibility to be everything for you. And of course, we can offer our friends advice and guidance, but at the end of the day, we can end up overwhelming them. And I know that I have been guilty of doing that with more than one person that I care about. So it's not that I don't talk to my friends and family about what's going on in my life, but rather I'm able to get an intelligent, clinical, unbiased, not opinion, but rather feedback
Mm-hmm.
on what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, so that I can further reflect and continue to grow and heal.
Do you ever slip back into your old ways in terms of your unhealthy relationship with food?
Uh, as of recent, no. I see personally an eating disorder, I think, will be a lifelong struggle because an eating disorder is a relationship with control. So I found that the less in control of my life that I was, the more I would control my relationship with food and exercise. The more I would control the way that I could make my body look, if I put in enough effort. And I knew exactly how to do that. So when there had been moments in my life where I felt powerless, I would just turn to controlling my food intake again. And it's so easy to do that, especially when you know all of the methods, when you know how many calories are in every single ingredient in every single thing you make. But now, again, understanding where this comes from, and that comes from therapy. Being able to have a conversation where someone says, why do you think you are turning back to this? Do you think it's because you feel powerless right now? So if I find myself, and this will still happen, critiquing myself, if I find myself in a moment in the mirror picking at myself, I have to pause and ask myself, are you feeling powerless? Is there something you feel like you need to control that's not this right now? More often than not, the answer is yes.
You've given me some great food for thought here because I I also have an unhealthy relationship with food, but it's one that I've kind of just accepted over the years in the sense of I eat the same things every day. I know how many calories are in my eggs and my oatmeal and I splurge on my scoops of peanut butter. I love peanut butter, so I have a bunch of that. But I eat chicken or fish every night. Like it's the same things. Trying to eat balance meals, but like I'm addicted to exercise. I'm addicted to movement. I do kickboxing. I run. I do body weights. I do weightlifting. I do yoga. I bike. I walk a shit ton. I love movement, and I love the feeling of just burning off calories. And so maybe it is something along the lines of like, I know I can control this because maybe there's something else in my life that is spiraling out of control. And this is my way of reckoning with that. So thank you for presenting that to me as such, because that is something that that I struggle with. I mean, I hopped on the scale last week, and again, numbers mean nothing, but I literally said to my girlfriend who was here, I was like, oh dang, I am 7 pounds lighter than I should be right now. So that's that.
I think that we can find safe spaces in our relationship with food, safe foods, places where we're not pushing the boundaries too much. But also, I have to say my biggest piece of healing is not looking at the scale. Throw the scale away. You know what you're supposed to look like.
Yeah.
You know when you feel good. Last time I weighed myself, I was the heaviest I've been in 10 years. And I was taken aback because I had a dual response. The first one was, holy shit, this is so bad. And the second one was, wait a minute, you looked in the mirror this morning and thought, oh, God, you never looked so good. So the scale, not my friend.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing all that. I really do think there'll be a lot of people who will get some value from that. Going back to your yoga journey. So in 2018 is when you decided to do your teacher training and then start the journey toward becoming an instructor. Why did you want to take it a step further and actually start to share with people what you had learned over the past couple of years?
Well, I think I have a knack for educating, but even more so, I saw what I had been given in yoga, being able to go to a yoga class and have someone else take the reins. It's so nice to not make decisions for an hour.
Yeah.
We make so many decisions all day, every day, from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep. And the blessing of being able to let someone else call the shots, follow along, and most importantly, be so focused, as I said earlier, on not falling over and following the class that you can't remember what you're so stressed about. It's really, really hard when you're trying to stand on one leg and hold your foot with the other hand and balance your arm and shift your gaze to think about your scale. Really hard to think about work, your relationships, anything else but just staying afloat. And I think that we can learn a lot of lessons from yoga in that way. Sometimes the only thing that needs our attention is just staying afloat, staying balanced, staying present.
Speaking of presence, I think a lot of people who do yoga or meditation and then get out of doing yoga or meditation because they beat themselves up over, I'm not good at this. I can't get my mind into a place of nothingness. A lot of people can't, for a lot of people, the hardest thing in the world is to sit still in a room and do nothing and just be alone with your thoughts. When you find yourself, your thoughts drifting to your day at school, something going on at home, what you're going to have for dinner, how do you get back to that moment of just being there with your body and the people around you in that shared experience?
As a student, as
Yes.
someone practicing?
Yes.
Well, first and foremost, yoga is a practice. When I started taking yoga classes 10 years ago, I couldn't touch my toes for a long shot. I was never naturally flexible or athletic. I never played a sport in my life. I remember stretching in gym class and being really embarrassed because I couldn't do anything that all the athlete girls could do in class. So remember that we all start somewhere, and we all fall, and we all struggle and stumble and make mistakes. And second, your mind shouldn't be clear. That would be terrifying. Meditation is really just the act of observing your thoughts. You take a step back. Why am I thinking this? What is going through my head right now? How can I allow these thoughts to go through my head without judging them? Just being aware of them. And when we do that, we're able to learn so much about ourselves. So, in your yoga practice, if you find yourself drifting off to anything but that, pay attention. What is your brain trying to tell you right then? Is it important? Can you allow yourself to be present? Yoga teachers joke that the most challenging posture in all of yoga is Shavasana.
Yeah.
When you lay still, you focus on your breath, and you're asked to do that for 5 minutes. That's hard.
It is very difficult. Something that, a pose I've been doing for 10 years and still haven't mastered. I love yoga in all of its benefits, and I especially love it because of a word that you mentioned earlier. You mentioned the word surrender. Surrender is one of my favorite words in the universe. I was in a yoga class maybe two summers ago. My friend Jake, I worked at ESPN, and we had this corporate yoga that we did every Thursday. And the instructor told us to grab blocks. And so grabbed blocks, and then I forget what the pose was, but Anita, the instructor, told us to use these blocks for this pose, and everyone around me was using the blocks. Jake next to me was using the blocks. I chose not to use the block because I'm like, well, I'm a man. I don't need any assistance. Like, I can do this myself. I'm in great shape. I got this. I don't need a block because I'm too athletic. I'm too good at this to need a block or something, right? And then at the end of the class, Jake pulled me aside and said, dude, use the block. It is going to help you. It's only going to further the pose. Yoga is all about surrender and giving into what you cannot control, and accepting and being humble enough to accept that, hey, maybe I'm not good at this. Maybe I need some help. Maybe I need, maybe it's okay to give in sometimes and surrender. So I'm really glad that you brought up that word, because I think that it is something that is difficult for people to do. And maybe that is why some people, shoo away like a meditation or yoga practice.
Well, I'd also say if someone's nervous about trying yoga, intimidated by everyone in their fancy Lululemon clothes and their special gear, just come to a yoga class. Come in your shorts and your t-shirt and try. Because I promise you, no one in that room is going to look at you and judge you. They are going to be so happy that you are there, because they have all been there. Not one of us tumbled out of the womb, in a child's pose.
That's very true. I also want to ask you about, again, something more personal. So in the last couple of months, you went through a breakup that, I believe you were together with your partner then for about 5 years. And that's interesting to me because, at this stage in our lives, right? So I just turned 26, you're 28. For some reason, the number 30 holds a lot of gravity. 30 means, hey, you're supposed to have it figured out by 30. If you're not married or if you don't have kids by that age, you should be on the track to having all of those things figured out. So I'm very curious to know for you, if just kind of how you're doing since the breakup, and kind of when you guys did break up, and because you were living together, you moved out, you and your rabbit Ralph, shout out to Ralph, everyone's favorite rabbit in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Just kind of what you went through in the ensuing days once you kind of had to start a different life for yourself.
Well, I think the best place to start this was it was before the breakup happened. And I think we really need to trust. It's so hard. We need to trust our guts. I think that I had known for quite a while that the life, or rather the trajectory of my life from where I was standing wasn't right. But everything about it was perfect. So why would I mess that up? And I kept convincing myself it's me. Like, you're out of your mind to give up your life that has nothing but perfect promise. You are loved. You have a boat together. You have this beautiful home together. You've been together for so long. You've been on so many adventures. There's so much history. You have your life planned out. And there was this voice in me that I kept shutting down that was saying, it's not right. And I had so many arguments with this voice, like, are you out of your mind? Look at my life. In the next year, I'll be engaged. And in the next year after that, I'll be married. And then we'll get a house and I'll have this beautiful, perfect life. But there's no such thing as perfect. And, I think compatibility has a lot to do with things. And just because on paper, everything looks perfect doesn't mean that it is. And one day it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, I can't do this anymore. And I had all of these thoughts. I can't afford a place in Portsmouth on my own. I'm just a school teacher and a yoga teacher. This city is expensive. I can't be single at 28. I'm supposed to be, I'm going to get married. I have a whole life. I can't be single at 28 in this city that I can't afford to live in, but I don't want to move. And I felt like I had pressed the self-destruct button on my life. But one thing we know to be true is that even when a forest burns to the ground, it fertilizes the earth for new life. And that's what it was. And I really believe in alignment. And somehow within a week of making the biggest, I think, most terrifying, most challenging decision of my life, I found an apartment that I could live in by myself and bring Ralph. I found that I could not only do this by myself, but do it very well. I found that I was going to be just fine. And more and more and more fell into place after that. I picked up some more yoga classes. My friends, man, you've never known the people that love you until you go through a crisis. They come through so hard. And I kept waiting. And I felt like everyone around me kept waiting. Like, all right, she's going to lose it. She's going to have like a mental breakdown and then we'll all see. It never happened. I think that sometimes you have to really, really trust that scary gut feeling that says you have to take the leap. You have no idea what's on the other side. You have to take the leap. And even though it was hard and it was scary, I'll say I've never been more proud of myself. I look at my apartment. I look at everything that I've accomplished in the past few months, and it makes me love myself so much more than I did staying in a place where I just wasn't happy.
I am so happy for you now that you have found happiness in all of this after pressing the self-destruct button on your life. Again, so many more questions going back to where you first started about kind of the doubts in your mind that had been percolating for a while. How long did you exist in this relationship with those doubts?
I think that they would come and go. I think that in every relationship, certain scenarios will go down and you'll ask yourself, is this what I want? And more often than not, unless you break up, you decide, yes, it is. This is a blip. But I think that after a while, you start to realize that the person that you see the potential for someone becoming is not the person that is in front of you. And I think that everyone does that. Everyone projects an image of people onto their friends, again, their family, their partners, of who they're supposed to be. And sometimes neglect to see and love and appreciate them for who they are. And I think once that I came to that realization, it just didn't seem fair to either one of us to stay in that place.
So obviously your life has changed dramatically in just a short while here. I'm kind of curious now, what does now that you don't have, because I'm kind of the inverse of you right now. I love alone time. I love being alone. I thrive being alone. And so I was not in a relationship for past like 6-7 years or something, and I loved it. But I'm now in a relationship with someone that I care a lot about. But I am struggling with the fact that, like, oh, it's not all about me anymore. I now have to care for someone, and I now have to make sacrifices for someone, and finally make decisions that concern someone else and someone else's well-being. And I have to make compromises. Like, I'm very routine oriented, and I have a lot of regiments and things that I just cannot now do anymore all of the time, because I'm now sharing whether it's a home or sharing a lot of my day with someone else. Do you have any advice for me in terms of how to navigate that?
I think it's good what you have. I think that the biggest mistake that people can make is becoming a we. And it's not to say that being a couple and doing things together and having shared routines is a bad thing. But I think that choosing to make time for another person is the real act of love, not the obligation. I think that choosing to adjust your schedule to incorporate another person is the act of love, not giving yourself until there's nothing left, not sacrificing your joy for someone else's. I think that those things can coexist. I think that you can have your joy and your partner can have their joy simultaneously. It doesn't have to be, I give up me so you can have me. It's, you enhance my life by being a part of it. And that was the piece that I couldn't understand myself. Yeah.
So now that you have much more free time, just kind of what does your day look like? How are you what are you doing now that you weren't doing before?
Well, this is where having a therapist is the greatest thing in the whole wide world, because oftentimes we can think that we're taking care of ourselves when we are not. So originally I moved in here. I was like, okay, I don't have to take care of anybody else. I just have to take care of me. And I never had to take care of anyone else, but I am a chronic nurturer. It sounds like a really nice thing, but it's a lot. I still do it anytime a friend is nearby. I'm like, I'm making a meal. Would you like to come and join me for my meal? Can I get you something? I'll refill your drink for you. I cater. A little too much. So falling into that pattern and having someone accept it meant that when I was on my own, I really didn't know what to do, because I'd never catered to me. So I would just make chicken and some roasted veggies every night. and I didn't really have any snacks in the house. And everything I did was just basic and boring, and however I could make it as easy as possible, because why put effort into just me?
Right.
And it was in a conversation with my therapist that she said, "How are you taking care of yourself?" I said, "Oh, hanging out with my friends. I'm going to yoga classes. I'm working out. Everything's great." She goes, "How are you taking care of yourself when you're at home?" I couldn't answer that. And I realized that the love that I had put into any other person, I hadn't been putting into myself. So the past month or so, I've been making myself wonderful dinners for me. I have so many leftovers. I still don't know how to cook for one, but I make great meals for me because I love to cook and I love to eat. I keep a clean house because I like it, not because I feel obligated to. I have creature comforts. I sleep with a rain machine, which is so weird, and I've never done that in my
I do
life.
too.
I really
No
like
worries.
it.
Yeah.
So I'm learning all of the things, to connect back to you and your independence that I want to become non-negotiables when the time comes that I'm ready to be in another partnership, because I do value my alone time now, and I do value the things I do for myself. And I'm learning how not to compromise myself anymore to fit into someone else's mold.
I love that. I agree with everything you said here. I've taken up too much of your time. I've got one more question. So, like I said, I love working out. I mean, I get antsy when I'm not moving. I mean, I'm a podcast producer, and so that involves a lot of sitting at the computer when I'm doing some hardcore editing and stuff. And so every 30 minutes or so, I might drop and do 10 burpees, or I might go run up and down the stairs just because I have this energy where I need to move. And so much of my identity and my happiness is wrapped up in my ability to move, that when I got badly injured 2 years ago, coincidentally, because I moved so much, I tore something in my hip because of just overusage. It shattered me. I'm physically and mentally, because I had wrapped up so much of my identity in that. So I'm curious. I know you dealt with a hand injury, I believe, during the pandemic, but if you dealt with something more severe than that, and you were not able to teach yoga for 6 months, how would you still identify as a person? Would you be okay or no?
So there are layers to this. First, I've done this a lot. The other side of the coin of struggling with an eating disorder while also being a yoga instructor is that you'll injure yourself a lot. But most specifically, yes, last December, I broke my middle finger, which didn't lead me to stop teaching yoga, but I pivoted. I said, all right, everyone, we're doing wrist-free yoga until I'm healed. And it went off. People loved it. But I crashed my moped before I started a full yoga teaching schedule for the first time in 2019. And I sprained both my ankles. I fractured my knee. I was a human road rash, broke half my toes.
Wow.
And I insisted that I was still going to teach yoga. But I think that it's not so much that I needed movement to feel like I was worthy, but rather that I needed to listen to, I like to say the universe, right? The universe just smacked me in the face and said, slow down.
Yeah.
How can I listen to that? How can I move in ways that are more mindful, that can help me slow down? How can I use this experience to help me to grow and to learn, no, I can't move the way that I would like to. Again, that questioning, that meditative thought, what does this say about my self-worth? Where are some other places that I can place my self-worth and show myself that I am still valuable and worthy, even without being able to do what I deem to be what makes me worthy? How many different parts of myself can I identify as being worthy and lovable? And to wrap it all together, I think that we get reminded in really cruel ways sometimes that we are more than what we think we are. I couldn't understand why all of the people in my life came forth and helped me endlessly when I went through my breakup and my move. And I was told, it's because we love you. Something it hadn't even occurred to me. It's like, why do I deserve this? Well, when you put good out into the world, when you put love into the world, it comes back. We're more than our ability to move. We are more than our accomplishments. Sometimes we are just worthy existing.
What is and I promise this is the last question. Gratitude is something that obviously is a huge part of a yoga practice. It's a huge part of my life. I like to write just in bullets, 1, 2, 3 things I'm grateful for every day. And it can be a big picture thing, my health, my family's health, to a small thing. I'm grateful I have a working pen today, like anything like that. I find to be really important. It centers you. It gives you a sense of perspective of just how amazing it is to be a human being, to be a healthy human being, in the United States, and to have a roof over your head and food on the table and all those things. So I'm curious, how does gratitude show itself in your life every day?
I spoke about this today in my yoga class, actually. I think sometimes we can get really caught up in our have-tos. So I woke up this morning and my little demon child here.
There's Ralph.
There he is, the prince, right? He he kept me up all night. He just learned how to jump on my bed, which is my least favorite thing. He's nocturnal, so all night I am being dug at. That's a problem I need to worry about later. But I woke up and I thought, I'm exhausted. I have to go to work today. I have to make the world's largest pot of coffee. I have to get myself ready. On my way home from work, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I have so much on my plate. I have to go home, prep dinner, go to bar class, teach a yoga class, go on Troy's podcast. And then it hit me. As I was going through this list, pour me all the things I have to do. These are all things I get to do. I get to wake up and pour myself a massive cup of coffee to help me get through the day. I get to go to a job that I love. I get to choose to make myself a meal before I get to work out, and I get to share yoga. So sometimes a gratitude practice doesn't have to be too intense for me. It just can show up as a shift in perspective. My life is such a gift. We have it so good. I get to do all of these amazing things. I do not have to. It is a privilege. So that is how my gratitude practice shows up more often than not.
I absolutely love that, Jessica. Thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate. You are wise beyond your years. I when I found out that you were 28, I was flabbergasted. I would have said she's 31 for sure, because she's very intelligent, and you've been through a lot. And I appreciate you sharing all that. I have tremendous respect for you, and I love your classes and so much about you. So thank you for sharing. your story. And I will urge everyone to follow you on Instagram at Sunlight Yogini. I'll put your details in the episode notes of this podcast, and I'll tell people where they can find you for goat yoga and all the other places that you're at. Jessica, thank you so much, and good luck on your continued journey.
Thank you so much, Troy. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for watching today's episode of The Troy Farkas Show. If you would like more from me and my guests, head on over to thetroyfarkasshow.com for more podcasts, blogs, and videos. Be sure to drop a like on YouTube. You can subscribe to my channel. You can follow the show wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We would really appreciate it.